Alright. Bianco 6 secret. Let's get on with it. I'm scared this is going to turn into another hour-long tutorial because there's quite a lot of material in this one, but I'll just crack on through it. Quick and quick. There are two basic, there are going to be two cycles that I teach, loosely speaking, two strats, one for absolute beginners and one standard strat that the majority of speedrunners will be doing. So not anything advanced, just normal strats that will last you until 116 easily. But yeah, alright, so Bianco 6 secret, right? The basic nature of this level is that, first of all, you have these moving platforms. So remember, with all these secrets, the platforms are always on the same exact cycle, starting with the cutscene mash. So at the point where the cutscene starts, that's when the platforms start moving from their fixed initial position. So you've got to get a good cutscene mash at the beginning, two thumb mash A and B to try to get an A or B press to land on every frame, to skip the cutscene, and that brings us to here, and that's where my save state is. So remember, everything is global cycles, including the platforms at the top. They're all moving on a cycle that also starts at when the timer is 0, at the beginning of the opening cutscene. Well, what that means is the movement here is pretty consistent. We just kind of do something like this, because, when you start the level, things can't change much. You can't make too many mistakes at the beginning, and so we just kind of pretend that there aren't any cycles when we do the first section. There's going to be some standard movement here. Next part of the level is this cube. When the cube starts, when you land on it or grab it. And then it always moves the same way, so we'll know how to deal with that. These triangles are on a cycle as well, which is affected by how fast you did the first part of the level so far, but it's nothing, they're very minor variations and adjustments you need to do to avoid the triangles. It's really, to be honest, on both the cycles that I'm going to teach, you don't have to care about them at all, so it's not too important. It's just on some strats, the triangles get in the way. Same is true of this cube. It also starts at the point where you start it, where you stand on it or grab it. And then this is, again, on the same global cycle as the beginning of the level. And so this is the bit where we're going to have to actually have different routes, figure out different methods for traversing all this stuff. Something that's not too improvised, that doesn't result in you killing yourself. So we're going to have different cycles depending on how fast we do the rest of the level. And that's it. That's loosely what this level is like. I'm going to link an article that shows you the kind of combination of strat selections that you might do. So particularly the openings are more or less all the same kind of thing. You don't have to worry too much about variation in opening speed, except if you get the 1-up on some of the beginner strats. But then there are different strats here that can be used to skip the cube, and depending on which ones of those you do, you get on this cube either more quickly or more slowly, and then you get different cycles at the top. So I will link an article that was written by Despin that links some combinations, lists some strats and some combinations of them which work at the top or not. The kind of cycle to go for when you're at the top, depending on how you did the bottom. That's basically the idea of this level. And there's not really much in the way of movement in this level. It's mostly kind of this, like, a little bit of, you have to be a little bit clean on the bottom and top, and then you have to be able to do this, like, trick jump, which has a few different strats for how it can be done. So it is kind of like a trick jump level, and then that's about it. You just, it's not really... Yeah, I mean, it's quite similar to Pinna 6 secret, which I hope to also get a tutorial out on at some point. In the sense that it all kind of hinges on how you do the big trick jump off the cube, basically, the cube skip. Or you don't do it, of course, for the beginner strat. Yeah, so that's that. I'm going to start explaining the beginner strat next. Beginner strat is going to be a strat that aims to get between 51 and 52 on the in-game timer that you see when it grabs the shine. So it's about 10.5 seconds slower than the standard strat that is done, or maybe up to 11 seconds depending on how you do it. So just know that you have that's the time save that you would get if you learnt a faster strat. But this strat very much works for absolute beginners. Everyone should not have too much trouble with this strat, so I think it's a very nice strat. Loses quite a lot of time, but consistency is key when you're learning the game, and having consistent strats on the secret is important. So let's get started. The opening movement, you're going to learn the timing of the dive by feel. You just kind of know when you can dive by practicing secrets. Practice the button mash, and then when using the visuals, there isn't really anything specific to aim for. You just get a feel for when to dive. But you don't have to dive. You can dive late here. It makes very little difference on the beginner strat. So just don't worry about when you dive. But yeah, you can basically, we start by diving and then doing a short rollout, and then dive three times in this direction to get over here. Before I get into that further, I want to just explain. So if you don't move the camera here, then the tree is going to kind of cut straight across the camera you see here, and it makes it difficult to see where you're going momentarily. So some people like me find this really distracting. So if you're like that, then all you have to do is tap the camera upright as briefly as you want, just during this rollout, right? So I dive, rollout, camera tap, and then get on with the rest of the diving. Here the correct movement is like jump dive into dive, so like dive, rollout, jump dive, dive. But the dive, dive, dive variant works well as well and barely loses time. It loses maybe 2 frames even. Or depending on how much you slide at the end as well. So I think for beginners, because you want this to be as safe as possible, it is nice to just do all the inputs as with moves that cover as little horizontal distance as possible. And that's why I'm saying dive, short rollout, dive, dive, dive is nice. Because if you do this cleanly, you end up sliding quite a bit on the blue platform, which is good, I think. Because it gives you time to react and get the long rollouts here, right? Long rollouts, so slide to the end of the platform and then get a long rollout to this platform. Jump, dive, roll out, and then we're going to jump to get the one up. So I'll just show you that again. Jump, dive, here, roll out, long roll out, jump onto the one up. I miss the one up sometimes. And you can turn the camera a little bit just during the, what is it? Let me, I just do it kind of automatically. During the rollout, you can turn the camera to face the one up, and then also while you're walking across the star, you can turn the camera forward so that it's facing the cube, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing here. Jump, dive, roll out, turn camera, jump, turn camera, dive. So we're going to dive off the star. It doesn't really matter when you dive. It's just kind of the idea is to like dive between the 2 triangles of the star, the yellow one and the green one. You have a bit of space to dive there. And then we're going to grab the cube. And so it's important in order to grab the cube that you slide all the way to the end and then do a long rollout, but long pressing A for at least 5 frames when you reach the end, and holding forward, right? Holding in forwards, so you've set your camera in the correct direction. 1, 2, 3, like this. Let me make a save state here. Yeah, okay, this is a decent spot for a save state. So I kind of run off between the 2 spokes of the star. And dive and then roll out when I reach the edge, which on this save state I'm reaching it quite fast, but like if you need to slide a bit, that's also fine. Like if I'm just like doing this, right? The important thing is just long rollouts here, and don't like be aiming too far to the side, because you kind of risk, if you roll out early or your angle is bad, you risk just not grabbing the cube. If that happens, usually this is how I get back up. And then, because you want to grab, well, if you're doing the beginner strat, you're not going to skip the cube, and so if you just kind of from here get on the cube, it doesn't really matter how fast or slow you go if you're doing a backup, right? It's not so important. But yeah, basically grab the cube. And that brings us to the cube. Let me see. So I want to explain the mechanics for triggering the cube, right? The cube starts moving if you ledge grab it. So if you ledge grab it, make sure to time an A press at the point where you grab in order to get up. This is a good habit to get into for the game in general. If you have to do a slow get up, you can still survive here, but often you just fall off in different places in the game. So definitely get in the habit of anticipating the ledge grab and being able to press A. You have a decent number of frames in which to press A, so it's not too bad. You just have to have the awareness that you're going to grab it, and so you can get up. So that's that, and the cube basically gets triggered. So this is the technical aspect of it, right? If Mario is on the cube and Mario has 0 horizontal speed. So the ledge grab is one way of achieving that, but also if you get on the cube like this, if you run around on the cube doesn't move until you hit 0, right? So that's worth bearing in mind. Then we're gonna walk on the cube, so we're gonna ride the cube all the way, and I would say, you know, it is pretty risky, like the cube in general is very awkward. I would say the best way to handle it is to just kind of walk at your own pace, so you can hold, you don't have to like tilt the stick, you can hold forwards all the way and stop and start. But the most important thing for consistency or not falling off is to just face in the direction that the cube is sloping. So like here I face back, here I face left when I'm running. Like if you can face even before you start running, then that makes things a little bit more consistent and a little nicer, I think. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Just bear in mind also to not like get distracted while you're on the cube. Don't read chat because you need to be paying constant attention to how it is turning in order to not fall off. You know, the second cube at the back there is often referred to as chat cube because people think they can just like check chat on Twitch while they're on it and then they die. So that's funny. Alright, so there's a cue for dismounting the cube. If you stand sort of in the transparent section in the middle, when the cube straightens out, so you see how this surface flattens out, then you have this orange square on the top left at the point where it flattens out, and then that's going to rotate inwards, right, like this. So the orange square is now pointing forward. Basically, if you stand here and just start running at the point where the start running forward at the point where the face starts turning, then that's a kind of nice cue for getting off the cube nice and quickly. And then all you have to do here is long rollout, dive, long rollout. When you get on the cube, press B with the stick neutral. So pressing B with the stick neutral, because Mario, if you land from rollouts and things, right? So remember, you have to wait until the square starts moving and then dismount. Like if you do this, then Mario stumbles, he takes a bunch of steps and it takes him a while to stop. So it's a really good habit to get into here is to, if you are doing this, like press B, have a neutral stick during the rollout, right? So hit neutral on the left stick during the rollout and then tap B when you arrive to the position you want to be in. So like I'm kind of arriving. Mario is stumbling. You can see his horizontal speed. It takes him a bit to stop. But as soon as I am where I want to be, which is on the face of the cube, like here, I can press B. I can press B here and that will immediately set my speed to 0 and it will trigger the cube immediately. Whereas if I don't do that, you can see how the deceleration takes another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 frames, right? And so you've saved 0.2 just by doing that. So it's really important, fundamental to get into, a habit to get into, right? And then we ride the cube, and there's nothing to say about this. You do the same thing as you did on the first cube. You just try to walk in the direction it's turning, pick up the one-ups, which are kind of here and somewhere over here. So this is like something you just get used to. It's fairly normal. Is there only one up there actually? Yeah, there's one up there and then there's one downstairs, isn't there, on this level? I think. I don't know why I was under the impression that there were two 1-ups there. It's like No. It's weird you play this level for so long and you still get confused about how many 1-ups there are here. I think there is one. And it's just this one. Right, there are no other 1-ups. No. Anyway, so we get to the top, and assuming everything has gone nicely, that actually brings us to the next section of the tutorial, doesn't it? Alright, so which save state do I want here? I want this one. So let's learn a cycle for the top. So first of all, there isn't really much you have to do to dismount here, but I'm still gonna be diligent about it and teach a little setup, just so that you know you're not being too slow. And that setup is, we stand kind of on this white rectangle here, just behind the line, right? Stand somewhere around here. You can be on the line as well if you're scared, sort of around here. And the first cue that we have is when the front edge of the cube touches the bottom edge of the yellow rectangle, the yellow cuboid, right? So here, like here, this is a good time to start running. And then when Mario runs past this line on the cube, right, between the transparent square and the white rectangle, that's a good time to jump and do a full jump, so at least 7 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then Mario should make it over the edge here. And if he gets scuffed on the edge a little bit, it's really not a problem. Don't worry about it, right? That is a nice and easy walking cube dismount. We just kind of wait until the cube hits here and then just run off like this. When you're either in the air here or on the ground, just dive forward and do a long rollout, which is just a nice way for us to get to the end of this yellow rectangle, and we're going to want to be at the end in order to catch the cycle here. And then this is what the cycle is, right? So I'll demonstrate the cycle. Let me actually just make another save state that's slightly closer to make this a bit less annoying. Right here. So the cycle is basically this. It's nice and easy. It doesn't require any spin jumps. That's not the correct ending movement. Sorry. I'll do it one more time with the correct ending movement. So, oh fuck, I forgot. It doesn't matter. It's whatever. So I call this the 51 cycle. If you're a bit sloppy about it, you can get a 52. It's a high 51 to low 52. But yeah, basically something like that. So basically what I'm doing is I'm standing around here, and then I'm trying to jump dive. And don't forget, Mario jump dives further if he starts with a running speed. He jump dives quite a bit further, in fact, so you definitely want to be running and then jump dive at the right time. So you stand kind of here, like just a little bit so that you can run up. And you only need to run for, you know, a few frames. It doesn't matter too much, like let's say 0.2 of running at least. It's not too important. Like take 3 steps, you know. But yeah, the timing is kind of stand here and wait for the red platform to flatten out the way it is here. So basically it's flattened out immediately, so I can immediately go for this. Just make sure you jump dive right off the edge. And then slide along as long as you can. Just hold up, slide, and then when you reach the other end of the red platform, as far back as you can without really being too risky. Like when you cross like this line, for example. Here is a good time to roll out, when you've crossed, when the middle of Mario is approximately made it past the wooden plank / red edge line, the boundary between those. So, yeah, because this red platform is moving towards you, so if you bonk and you find this a bit too risky, then adjust your cue slightly and just wait for it to start moving a little bit before you jump off. But don't wait too long, or otherwise this other platform, the blue one, is going to start fading back because it's moving in the opposite direction, so you won't be able to reach it. So the queue is a little bit annoying, I have to admit. I think this is maybe the hardest part of the beginner strat. But the beginner strat is so easy that this is, I mean, this is not hard. It's just something you can choke under pressure because you kind of have to at least be aware of waiting for the red platform to start moving. If you do choke it a little bit, this can happen. So like if I wait too long, I can get this ledge grab. And so I'm going to show a few backups that you can do if you get this ledge grab. It's really nothing to be afraid of. But obviously if I wait way too long, like for example, if I wait until this blue platform, the second one at the back there that we're going to try to roll out onto, if it is over half turned, so you see here it's like, yeah, here, so here, like where the blue platforms are basically completely vertical. Yeah, here. So where they're completely vertical, this is too late. You don't want to run and jump dive off, or otherwise you won't make it. This is I think this is a good cue for when it's too late. Like this would happen, right? So you wouldn't even get the ledge grab. You would just be too far back. So kind of run off right after the red platform has not I would say not quite when it's flattened out, but just like a little bit later. And then you'll make it on. When I say a little bit, I really do mean a little bit. Like even if I wait slightly too long, I end up getting the ledge grab. But the ledge grab is still safe. And just make sure you don't go, like, even now is a little bit risky. This still makes it, but like if the blue platform is completely vertical when I start running, it's just not gonna make it. Barely. That barely made it. I like those plosives on the mic. I don't have a pop filter, so I'm just going barely with a big pop. Yep, so cool. That's that. Let me finish off this pass, and when you get to here, it becomes very easy. You can basically see these platforms. You can basically run across the gap. If you're like very confused or slow about it, you can jump. It's not a problem. But yeah, just run over here. And then we're just going to jump dive, long roll out, turn on the red platform and jump dive. Really easy. The only thing that's important to bear in mind for general safety, depending on your cycles, is to jump dive when you get to the end of the platform. Like don't jump dive off the middle, or otherwise jump dives often don't make it. And for this level, this is a very good principle in general. Just make sure you're quite close to the end of the platform before jump diving. We do 2 long rollouts as well, because we're trying to cover as much distance as we can here. And then the correct ending movement, which I seem to never be in the habit of doing, is re-dive, short rollout, jump dive. That's nice and safe and fast. And so we get nice 51s if we do that. Re-dive, short rollout, jump dive. Obviously, if you're absolutely perfect, you don't need to re-dive, do a long rollout instead, but that usually doesn't make it. Of course, the tip that I give about doing a ground pound in case you're just about to not make it is always a good thing to do. Doing a jump delayed dive doesn't actually help here, because don't forget, delaying a dive doesn't affect the vertical trajectory. And so the time you land, which is the time when the timer stops, and effectively in RTA the length of the level, remains unchanged by delaying the dive. So there's no need to delay the dive. Yeah, and that's that. That's the beginner cycle. Very nice, very easy. So I'm going to go through a few backups, right? So, right. So, this then is the situation I said where you get a ledge grab here because you weren't quite fast enough running off and jump diving here. So this happens sometimes. You can back this up quickly or slowly depending on how confident you are. If you want to do it quickly, you just kind of... So anticipate the A press first of all, or like press A as soon as you can. Actually, I think you might have to react to it, because if you think you're going to land, you wouldn't want to press A. So just wait to see Mario grab, react, jump onto this platform. And remember, don't like directly jump, or there's a risk you're going to like run off the edge here, like this, right? So walk in a bit, jump, and then wait for the red platform to have turned, and then jump dive onto it. In both these situations, I've gotten a side flip dive, right? So I just want to make sure everyone understands why that is. Like, if you turn like this, you can get these turnaround animations where Mario makes a bit of dust on the ground and turns around. If you jump out of that, you would get a side flip, and if you jump dive, you would get a side flip dive, which, you know, this is a jump dive, and like this is a side flip dive. It goes a lot higher and covers a lot more distance. So sometimes you will accidentally get one of those, so it's just important to know why that happens. But in this case, it's not really a big deal. Jump on here, and in order to avoid side flip dives, you just kind of turn the stick a little bit more slowly, and don't like do really abrupt. Don't take corners as like hairpins. Try to just do sort of have a turning circle and go around like 90 degrees. So kind of like this, right? And so we want to get onto this platform. Anytime after the platform has, so I got a side flip dive there by accident, but it's fine. Anytime after this red platform has stopped turning, we can jump dive onto it. And then we have to do stop rollouts. So like if I just did a rollout here, I would go off the edge. So I want to hold back. Holding back kills your horizontal speed. And when it's slow enough, we can just tap A to get an in-place rollout. In-place rollouts do actually send Mario very slightly forward. They're not completely in place. It is possible to do an in-place rollout. Kind of like, let me actually show this. So it's possible to like do this. And then if you, even if you hold neutral, you can kind of go off the end, carry a bit of extra momentum. Well, it's actually quite hard to show that, but it's not important. Yeah, so just by holding back, waiting a bit, being patient, and that's how you get these stop rollouts, right? And that's all we want to do here. Just jump dive here, stop rollout, jump dive after this has turned, stop rollout. And then do the standing spin jump dive setup that I showed before. So standing spin jump dive, don't forget, we can press B while holding neutral in order to do a grab, and during that grab we buffer a spin and jump dive off. This is the same as the Bianco 3 secret backup, so I won't go into it again. You don't actually have to do a jump dive here, I just realized. You can just, you know, jump onto this and then make sure you're standing and holding neutral before pressing B to do the spin jump dive. So it's important to just separate things out and don't rush anything here, because there's really no need. But yeah, I would actually just do a jump here rather than the jump dive into stop rollout. Stop rollout, of course, people often call it like a recovery instead of a rollout, but it is still pretty much the same thing, so I would call it a stop rollout. So this is like how you would do the backups. This is the slow backup, isn't it, that I've just taught? Yeah, this is the slow one. The first one is like, you start it the same way, but then you jump dive in this direction and long rollouts. Yeah, I can't remember if I said I would do the fast one or the slow one first, but that was the slow one, and then the fast one is you just kind of run off. Same tip I gave before, just make sure you're at the edge before you do a jump dive. And also, make sure you roll out immediately. As soon as you hit this blue platform on this backup, roll out immediately, because it will always make it, like, you have plenty of space. But also, the more you slide on this, the bigger the risk is that the platform will turn on you. And so if you're a bit slower here, that can be dangerous. And so just get in the habit of immediately rolling out if you go for this backup. And then we just do the same thing where we run on the red platform until we get to the edge, and then we can jump dive off it and do the usual set of inputs to end. So this fast backup barely loses time. It's like 5260 is what I'm getting on it, right? 5250 even. The slow one is, how much is this? What is this backup? It's not, I can remember what the inputs are. It's like this, stop rollout, this, and then standing spin jump dive. Actually loses another 3 seconds, so I would recommend just going for the fast backup. It just takes a little bit of confidence to, you know, have this under control. But you're only losing barely a second from getting the ledge grab there. So that's that. There's another little bit thing that I wanted to teach, which is just like an instinctive reaction. If like, for example, I mess this up and I get like scuffed on this platform and I still survive, here, I'm on the red platform, but I have barely any time, right? And it's like I would like to do a spin jump dive, but the spin jump dive takes a bit too long to stand and input the spin. Or alternatively, I'm in a situation where I want to jump dive, but I can see the distance is a little too big and the jump dive won't make it, but I don't have much time. What do you do in this situation? And the answer is, you remember the accidental side flip dive we got? Well, we can very much just do that. This was a little bit too slow, so it didn't work. But basically, like say here I'm scuffed. I'm trying to like get a scuffed sort of late movement here. To show you what I mean when I say instinctive backup here, right? So like if I'm slower than this and I'm doing this, like, and like let's say I just barely make it over to the red platform, that's what I'm trying to do. It's hard to like deliberately fuck this up. Like this, right? Here, you can do a side flip dive. And to do a side flip dive correctly, or like nicely, you hold forward, face forwards, and then basically move the stick back and forwards. Not too fast, but basically the safest way of doing a side flip dive is to move the stick back and then forward, and then on the after you've moved it forward, you can do that. Just press A and B. So this is a nice instinct to have, basically something that you can train if you're ever in that situation where either you feel like you don't have enough time to get off the platform, or you want to do a jump dive but you can't because the distance has become too great where you would usually do that jump dive, and you wouldn't make it. Then the instinctive side flip dive is a really nice thing to get into your mind. And that's that. That's the beginner strat. I hope none of this is too difficult, but certainly something that everyone should be able to do without too many problems. So I'm going to move on to the proper strat. The proper strat is, instead of 51 cycle, it is 41 cycle. It saves like 10.5 seconds or so. And we're going to start from the bottom. And now we're here. So let me just check everything is still working. Yeah. So the strats that I'm going to teach next, there's going to be a lot of backups, which are whatever. But the main strat is the strat that is kind of standard. So completely standard. Most players do this, unless they are really trying to push their any percent in the like 115s and 114s, then they might go for a faster strat. But also, like, whether once you're a beginner and you get this strat down at some point in the 120s for any percent, then it kind of, you know, it's not too hard. Like, fairly low level players can do the strats, and so it's kind of like a good general standard strat to teach. You know, it's just a very nice and fairly easy strat. This is me showing it off without mistakes. Let's go. It gets a nice 41. 41.00 is about what you want to aim for this strat if you do it cleanly. You can get high 40s as well, but there's a low in the high 40s. This is a low. Right, so with the 41 cycle, this is what we do differently. So the opening is basically the same as what I taught before. Like up until this point, again, it doesn't really matter if you do the jump dive or the 3 dives and slides. You can go for a long rollout here as well if you want. That will be a little bit faster because you'll slide on the ground less. So depends on what you're comfortable with, but basically you don't have to worry too much about this. It is true in general that our movement has to be fairly crisp in order to make the cycle. So if you can, definitely try to do the jump dive, do a long rollout. Actually, I'm not even sure the long rollout saves that much time because it kind of sends you in the wrong direction, but like doing a medium rollout at least, like 3 or 4 frames here. And jump dive. And try to hit as many of these like close to first frame as you can because it'll carry a good bit of momentum forwards and that kind of thing. So we jump dive over the star and then roll out, with long roll out onto the cube. So we're going to skip the 1-up. We don't have time to get the 1-up on this cycle. It is possible to bonk the star on this movement, but if you just kind of try to stay back a little bit, because the nice thing about these jump dives are they give you control for like where you're going to roll out. So you can roll out a little bit further back, like, you know, here-ish, and then when you jump dive, you'll probably not hit the star, at least on that cycle, because the star's always moving. Obviously, you can go faster forehead, because then the star won't have advanced as much, and so it's less likely to hit you. And the last thing you can do if this is really a problem for you is you can delay the dive. So like here, A into B, thumb slide for the jump dive over the star, which I wouldn't recommend personally because I think it's just annoying to have a squashed delayed dive trajectory because you end up sliding on the ground more. You'll probably lose time. And make the cycle at the end harder for yourself if you do that. So if you can just get jump dives to always work, that's what I would recommend here. And it's not the end of the world if every now and again you just bonk it by accident. You can just do a backup cycle, but it's a at least from my experience, it's really unlikely to happen, particularly if you actually try to drift slightly back. When you land from this rollout, like try to just kind of drift slightly back, like hold the stick down left a little bit. That's really the tip that I would give there, the only one that's really important. Then we grab the cube, same as before. In this case, we definitely want to make sure that not only do we press A to get up on the cube, but we also press L to center it, right? Because we're going to do a cube skip, and all of those are made nicer by centering the cube. Yep. So this cube skip, here's my save state for it. There are 3 different cube skips we can do here. One of them is the one I'm going to teach, is going to basically involve doing a walking spin jump, Y turn, and jump dive off the wall. You can also do a rollout here, which I don't know how to do. Oh, actually, there it is. It gives you a lot more height. Typically, when people do this strat, they do 2 spin jumps, actually. Let me see if I can show that off. Like, yeah, you get the wall slide and then, hang on. I have to buffer my spin better. Yeah, here, and then they do another Y turn. That's just because like that strat sends you so far up that you run the risk of actually just jump diving off the end, like jump dive and like go all the way off the end. So there are those 2 strats, right? So we buffered the spin out of a step, we buffered the spin out of a rollout. I'm doing this really badly, by the way. Don't mimic me for doing the rollout strat. I don't actually know how to do that strat, and I'm not going to teach it, but I'm just showing it off as like this strat does exist. And the final strat that you can do is you can just kind of face in this direction, do a spin jump like this, and then just drift like this. So what's happening here is we do the spin jump with a fairly sharp angle, so that we actually do manage to get a wall slide. But then we can, in midair, we can drift by holding the stick to the left, and drifting in midair doesn't change our angle, which means we're still going to be able to get the wall kick with the sharp angle, but we need to drift in order to actually hit the wall, because the sharp angle takes us away from the wall. This strat I really do not recommend learning as a beginner, but I want to just point out that it exists, in case you really hate Y turns and you want to like try to do this cycle. Because Y turns are very difficult, if not the hardest thing for a beginner to learn in order to do this strat. So you can avoid them by doing this shit, but it's just very risky in my opinion, and very inconsistent strat compared to the other 2. So there is also this cube skip that some beginners will do. This one, momentum spin off this face, but this cube skip is too slow for this cycle, so do not do it. That strat is fairly pointless. The only real reason you might want to do it is to go for like a 47, 48 cycle, so somewhere between 41 and 51. Which I guess you can do if you want, but I would just not bother, because learning another cube skip and having this inconsistency in your strats is kind of unnecessary. This one's quite risky. It's very easy for it to not make it and just bonk and die. So I would really just steer clear of that. And then there are some faster strats that I will touch on as well, just when I talk about further work that an advanced player might do, and that's when I get to this tutorial, the end of this tutorial. In section 6, I'll just briefly mention those. But yeah, those are all of the cube skips. So step-y, step-y cube skip, as well as rollout+y cube skip, as well as boomer cube skip, which is this one, which is just this simple and stupid one that used to be done by boomers in 2017 times and before. Those cube skips are all, believe it or not, approximately as fast as each other. So it is effectively preference which one you do. It is possible to make like rollout+y slightly faster than the other two, and boomer is slightly slower, I think, than step-y as well. But for practical purposes, they are actually the same speed, and so you can actually choose which one you want to do entirely. Up to you. Alright, so I'm going to teach step-y. Step-y is... let me get over to the other side, actually, to show you this one. So, like... Right, so step-y relies on the movement fundamental that I had touched on in Bianco 3 and in the Bianco 3 tutorial particularly, which is that when we buffer spins, we can buffer them late and then take a few steps before unleashing the spin jump. And this has a characteristic wiggling animation because the stick is still moving from the spin after Mario lands. You can see it here. Mario's wobbling a bit before doing the jump. And don't forget, we need these steps either to accelerate to get more speed or to turn. Like if we wanted to do the spin jump to the side. In this case, we only need to accelerate, so we just need to get a few steps down in order to accelerate, right? So one thing to say about this from a technical perspective is the reason we need this acceleration is, of course, because we're standing still here, so we're just at walking speed. And when you're at walking speed, or like, because you buffer a spin either from standing completely still, from pressing B, or from jumping. And we're going to do a little jump to buffer the spin for this strat. And when you do that, landing from a jump is really slow, and taking a few steps actually picks up Mario's speed, and that's why we get more speed if we do the spin really late and take a few steps before pressing A. There are other situations, like for example when landing from a rollout, where this isn't true anymore. Rollouts are quite fast, and so if we can just press A immediately, we will get more speed than so this is if we do an early spin, and so that we can press A, ideally frame perfectly as we land, we will get more speed than we would if we let ourselves basically buffer the spin late and let ourselves take steps. We would actually be slower than immediately spin jumping out of a rollout, I think. If that makes sense, right? So what I'm saying is, if you're moving faster, for example, landing from a rollout, then getting a first frame spin jump from landing is faster than getting a late one from letting yourself walk. So those are the differences. It depends on how much speed you have initially, whether it is better to do an early buffer and press A as soon as possible after landing, or a late buffer where you let yourself take enough steps in order to do a spin jump. So this is just a movement fundamental that I want to explain because it affects strat selection and in what way it is faster to do different spin jumps all across the whole game. Sometimes it kind of breaks even, and it's equally fast to do early spin and late spin for a spin jump. But that's basically the trade-off and the logic that goes into it. So that's explained. The other fundamental that needs to be taught here is, of course, how to Y-turn. So like I said, I think this is the hardest part of the entire level. on this strat. And Y-turning is something that beginners pick up very slowly, in my experience. And I think the best place to learn to Y-turn is pianta entry, because it's a lot more consistent than doing the triple jump strat there. And it's a good place to just start learning to Y-turn. Which is one reason you might want to not do this strat as a beginner immediately, is you want to give yourself a bit of time to learn to Y-turn, because it is very fuel-based. So what is there to say about Y-turns other than, you know, letting you practice and eventually get them down? Well, for starters, on this strat, we want to Y-turn fairly late, so make sure you've started falling from the spin jump at the point where you press Y. So we do that, and then I kind of hold up right-ish a little bit, and so it's I time how long I hold up right. I feel that timing. And then I press A to get out of Y-cam. So remember, get in Y-cam around here, turn, and then get out of Y-cam again. I shouldn't really mash A to get out of Y-cam, I can time it, but that would be better for me to demonstrate. You know, you've got to be on your best behavior when you're teaching. Make sure you demonstrate best practices. But yeah, basically that, right? Spin Y, tilt stick, Y again, and then A and B to jump dive when you hit the wall. So it's important to turn enough to have an angle in order to get a wall kick. Of course, getting a wall kick means you have to approximately be facing into the wall at least 45 degrees, which means you can't just kind of do this. Or otherwise Mario won't catch the wall, he won't get a wall slide. Like if you Y-turn early and just kind of drift into the wall, you risk not catching the wall if your angle is too shallow. Let me demonstrate that a bit better. Like this, right? This isn't going to catch the wall. So that's why we Y-turn late, and also why it's really helpful to get as much speed as you can out of the spin jump, and so that's why we late buffer the spin. You don't have to be perfect about the spin jump by any means, just even one step is probably enough. Because you don't want to try to hit it perfectly, or you might drop the spin and fall down, like as you would in an IL, like where it's optimal to wait about 7 frames after you land before you actually press A. That's something you definitely do not want to do in RTA, because you risk dropping the spin from waiting too long with the A press after you started the spin. Because remember, the buffer is at the point of the A press, the spin has to have been completed start to finish within the past 10 frames, right? So yeah, those are basically the tips for this particular spin jump. I like, you know, press Y late, hold up right just a little bit, then exit Y cam with good timing, which I'll explain in a sec, and then usually here I like to actually drift. I don't know if this helps or not, but I like to drift in midair, the same as you would on Boomer Cube Skip. A little to just get a bit further along the wall. And then when you get to the wall, just press A and B. If you press A and B before you get the wall, it's very risky because you're in midair, you would just dive into the wall. So just be very mindful of not doing that. Just spot the landing on the wall, and then you should be good. Make it across to the other side. Right, so yeah, the further right you hold the stick when you're Y-turning, the faster you turn. This, I'm holding straight right here. Mario turns at a... If I hold right as soon as I press Y, because it takes a bit for the camera to accelerate, believe it or not. It takes Mario pretty much exactly 2 seconds to turn 360 degrees. Whereas if I hold upright, it takes him 3 seconds to turn, so it's a bit slower. And also the camera starts facing downwards. It is possible to actually do the same thing and face the camera upwards, but there's no circumstance in which you would want to do that. This is kind of a choice between turning right and upright. But of course, in this circumstance, because we don't need to turn much at all. It's barely 45-degree turn, less even, I think. I don't think you even need to be over 45 degrees in order to get a wall slide. I think probably more like 30 degrees works as well. So we don't need to turn a lot at all. And that means that, you know, you definitely don't want to hold Y all the way right, because then, like, by the time I've swung the camera back, I've overturned. So just roll the stick up to upright and then roll it back in order to get this Y turn. like this. And I barely, if you can see, watch my stick movement, right? So I'm like barely turning, just nudging the stick upright in order to turn there. And upright is of course a fairly slow turning speed, but also means that I can just slide the stick back to up, which I want to do in order to drift through the air as fast as I can. That's all I have to say about Y turns, I think. That's all the advice that I have. Just practice, eventually you will get it down. And also, there's not much to say about timing this either, the spin jump. I do a fairly small jump and let myself take as many steps as I need. It's fine if you don't get all the way to the edge. It's nothing to worry about, because usually you have a bit of leniency for making the jump, but yeah, pretty much. Those are the tips that I will give. So that's me teaching the step-y technique for the cube skip. And of course, rollout+y is a bit different. There are some tips for rollout+y on Despin's guide, which are linked. It's a little faster. And if you want to learn boomer cube skip, you can there's a J tutorial for that. The J Bianco 6 tutorial explains boomer cube skip. So yeah, moving on. When you do step-y, obviously this is a very inconsistent movement. You could land pretty much anywhere. I should watch out that you actually make it to the other end. But you see the mistakes I made there, so I'm kind of fluffing the inputs a little bit, turning too much, and also when I jumped over into the wall, obviously. But like here, right? If you have things change depending on what your angle is. So usually, right, the movement you want to do here is just roll out, dive, roll out, and press B to get the cube started again. Same thing, same as with the easy strats. When you land on the face of the cube, you land with neutral stick and you press B, and that starts the cube as soon as possible. Like this, pow. You know, press B, clap the landing, and it basically stops Mario in place so that he doesn't take these steps, which lose about 0.2 typically. So all we're trying to do is basically space a second, do 2 dive rollouts and space the second rollout to land on the cube. But this is because of all of the variance there is in the directions we can approach from our cube skip. We do it in different ways. Like here we can do a long rollout twice, so this is easy. But quite often, I don't know if I'll be able to show some good examples of this, but quite often if you do this strat, you can end up landing with a trajectory that is basically would send you off the edge here if you did a long rollout. It's very easy for that to happen, so you just have to be aware and shorten your rollout. And be aware as well if you need to like take any steps here before you press B, so you can let Mario stumble if you've not quite made it to the cube, right? The important thing is we are trying to do this section as fast as possible. So here I did a slightly shorter rollout and then I had to run forward a bit and press B. I actually messed it up there, that would have lost a lot of time. Shorter rollout and then long rollout and press B. It's just important to try to do this as fast as possible, which means you want to pay attention to your rollout length to, depending on the angle of approach, to make sure it doesn't send you too far to the left. Because, you know, at worst case it is possible for that to kill you, like it just did in that example. And yeah, probably your second rollout is going to be long, but again, just pay attention to it and make sure you time the B press so that you've landed on the cube. Keep it as clean as you can in order to make the cycle at the top as easy for yourself as you can. But those are basically the steps that I have for that. Do you know, I forgot to say that the timing for the Y turn, after you press Y, you can press any button to get out of a Y turn. It can be B, A, or Y. I think those are the buttons that work. Yeah, X doesn't work. B, A, or Y to get out of a Y turn. And you can press it as long as at least 17 frames have passed since you pressed Y the first time, which is 0.56 seconds. So it's a timing to just to be aware of, right? I wouldn't blame you for mashing to get out of Y-cam at first, but it is always better to time things. You have more control over your timing windows if you time the A press or whatever button press in order to get out of Y-cam. So that's just something I should have said in the Y-cam section, but I've said it now. And yeah, that's all for the downstairs. And then we're going to ride the cube, and we're going to learn how to do the upstairs. Okay, so this here is a save state I have for a good cycle. We've made it to the top. Having done the bottom section, the downstairs section, fairly well. It is crucially important in this strat in order to be able. It is crucially important in order to catch the cycle that you can dismount this cube effectively, very efficiently, kind of like this. Is this the wrong save state? Yes. But yeah, basically what I just showed off, you want to be able to barely make it over the top here in order to catch this cycle, right? So the cycle is constrained by this. Fuck off. Sorry. The first red platform constrains the cycle, right? This red platform here constrains the cycle. You need to be able to make it onto that while it is still flat. And then if you've made it onto that, the rest of the cycle is always fine. So that's why I'm going to teach a setup in order to get off this cube as fast as possible. Because you basically, in order to get off it as fast as possible, you want to do a spin jump that just barely makes it over the top. So I'm not going to teach advanced strats for getting off with the GWKD, which I always forget how to do. My muscle memory's never been there for that. But just for doing this strat normally, you need to like really efficiently make it off. See, I did it a bit late there, and it's already like at the point where I did the rollout, the platform had already started turning. So that's why discipline is important in order to consistently make the cycle. So this is the setup. We're running over the top of the cube. Stand on the left, and you want to run on the last face of the cube. So the last face is this one, the one that stabilizes as being the top face. Run onto the last face, past the line here, onto the back section, here where the orange cube is, right? So run halfway down the orange cube, stand basically on here, basically in the orange cube, or on the line here between the orange cube and the white cube to the right. And then the timing cue is when it flattens out. That's when we're going to start doing our inputs. And so we can't just immediately jump and spin jump when it flattens out, because that's too early. Instead, we need to kill a bit of time by running into the middle. Run into the middle, right? So do like a solid rightward taps, enough that Mario is standing in the middle of the like white rectangle here at the back. The further back you stand, the more likely this strat is to work, but obviously it can get a bit sketchy to stand too far back, so just know that you give yourself more leniency for doing this dismount the further back you stand, but obviously don't stand too far back, we will fall off. And so that's why I say typically just standing at about half the way back is good. And then we tap right until we've run, at the point where it flattens, we tap right until we've run into the middle. And at that point, as soon as we stop stumbling from this little sprint that we did, do a full jump, hold A as long as possible, and then buffer a nice late spin jump off. Late again, so try to take a couple of steps. Not too many steps, because missing the spin jump means that most likely you'll lose 3 or 4 seconds because of the cycles at the top. So try to keep it somewhat safe, but nonetheless we do want to take a fairly late spin jump like this in order to get off. It's a bit too fast there. But yeah, you get a spin jump by doing that, and then we dive pretty much at the peak of the spin jump. So at the point where we're sure we've cleared the platform, that's the point where we dive. So I'm going to demonstrate this properly now that I've explained it. Just a few times so you can get a feel for what is good timing here. So like that, right? You have to just practice this for yourself, and obviously if the cues don't work for you, you can adjust them yourself. So we're trying to get to this platform, that's how we know we're safe and we've done it fast enough. But basically just being patient and having a good sense of timing and a good sense of the spaces between the inputs is pretty much key to success here. Don't rush anything, just like do a slow spin jump, wait for Mario to turn around and then press A. I say a slow spin jump, like, you know, I do a spin, wait for him to turn. And here, make sure you've given Mario like a few frames to actually stop before doing the jump, right? That's kind of this, just having this good separation between the inputs is what's going to help. And yeah, if you get that down, you'll find you'll be able to actually dismount the cube very efficiently. This was pretty much perfect there. And that will help you a lot in terms of getting everything consistent. This barely made it. I was actually standing a bit too far forwards, if you noticed. But yeah, you can be fairly confident if you do this correctly, you will get it. And so that is the dismount. Important to have good dismounts. So let me make a save state right after the dive here. I'm trying to press the spacebar. So we dive once here, just as we've just about made it over the top. And if you play kind of perfectly, you can long roll out, jump dive, long roll out, but typically you have to eat a bit of dust. And so what I would recommend for consistency of inputs is a redive. Do a redive into a short rollout rather than doing a long rollout. I think redive short rollout is nicer here for spacing. So don't forget, we did a spin and then we dove over the edge here. And then we dive again, do a short rollout, jump dive. And so I'll take it from there, right? Dive again, short rollout, jump dive, long rollout, spin jump dive, long rollout, jump dive, redive again, short rollout, jump dive into the shine. So again, we're on the last platform, I did once again here, right? So I did a redive into short rollouts. I can also just do a long rollout, but again, the spacing is worse. There's a good chance you won't hit the shine unless you slide on the ground a bit. If you want, you can slide on the ground, but I would recommend against it because I think it is slower and you're already kind of tight trying to catch the cycle here. Like here, like you can just do that. But I think I personally quite like just doing redives here. They don't really lose that much time and they just make all the inputs nice and consistent. See, I'm getting 41, so that's good. 41.00 or so. So it's about 10.5 seconds faster than the beginner strat. Depending on how fast you do the beginner strat, it can be 11 as well, or even 11.5. Between 10.5 and 11.5. There's nothing to really say about these inputs. They all work fine. Just remember to turn the camera during rollouts, or you can turn the camera during jump dives as well. But rollouts are really the perfect time to turn the camera, I think. And so you just want to have a bit of control where you, whenever you're in the air, you just kind of hover your thumb over the Y cam, over the C stick in order to make sure you're going in the correct direction. But this is very lenient. There is nothing to talk about really. This strat is one of the easiest, if not the easiest movements that you can do on the top. Easier than the beginner strat really, easier than everything. So the reason we don't do easier movement on beginner strat is all about which cycles are available to us. And if you can make this cycle, you've made your life a hell of a lot easier from just not having to fuck about with difficult movement at the top. So that's why I really recommend to everyone to learn how to make this cycle by whatever means you can. And the strats that I've taught are good enough that, certainly in my experience, I can absolutely consistently make this cycle as long as I don't make a mistake. Important to remember that you definitely have to be fast here, so don't try to be slow about it. It is better to bonk from being too fast than it is to be a little bit slow and then misread the cycle and just be a slightly too slow and die on the red platform. So, because if you bonk, then you have a bit of time to basically mentally prepare for doing a backup cycle, right? So it is better to bonk, which means definitely stick to your diligent inputs and do not Do not be too slow in order to be safe, I think is the important thing that I would say there. Okay, so that's that, and now the last thing I'm going to do is just teach a few backup cycles. So backup cycles, I'm not really going to go into too much detail on how to perform them. I'm just going to lay them out so that you know what your choices are. They're not too difficult on the whole. There is one that is difficult. I'll teach that one first because that one is the fastest one. So right, so here I have a save state that lost about half a second on the beginning compared to my other save state. So this save state is tight. It is barely possible to make this. It is still possible if you play perfectly, like I just did there. I got a really good dismount, I still made the cycle. You want to make sure you pull back here if you miss the shine. Get it. You should instinctively ground pound as well, because that'll give you a bit of extra height. And it won't lose any time, provided you... Yeah, if you hit the shine... If you would have hit the shine even without the ground pound, then the ground pound is not going to come out, and so you won't lose any time. So it's good to get in the habit of ground pounding there. But yeah, if you lose a bit of time, if you're a bit slower and safer with the dismount here, you know, you can easily get like just chords here. I'm still going fast enough actually, but I mean, you know what I mean, like this is a terrible dismount here. Like this kind of thing can happen, and then God knows, still survive that. Well, you would have done a spin jump dive there. But yeah, basically, just keeping an eye on the clock. We're almost done. So, if you feel, you're gonna have to get a bit of a feel for how much time you lose at the beginning in order to know if you're safe for going for the normal cycle at the top. If you're a bit slow, typically a good player will do this movement. This movement is very difficult. I say very difficult. It is just, I mean, very easy to fuck up. So this is traditionally known as cycleless. Basically, this is a bit more of a slightly more lenient window for execution than the other cycle. It works on more cycles, on more time frames. But you still have to be fairly fast about it, though. Actually, let me make another save state so I can show exactly how to do cycleless. Basically, rollout's kind of somewhere around here. I don't really know. And spin jump dive like diagonally across, you know, in this line, like diagonally, because you want to have as much of the blue platform available to you as possible, because we want to do a rollout and on the blue platform, so it has to be a short rollout. Try to space the spin jump dive by sort of hitting neutral in the air if necessary, in order to hit like as far back on this square as you can. And then just tap A and buffer a spin jump dive with good timing. Let yourself turn, remember, so walk forward 1 or 2 frames. And then unleash the spin jump dive for targeting the next blue platform, or like the edge of it here. So you need to turn the camera during that short rollout, and then you just kind of do jump dives as normal. It's nothing too complicated. So this cycle typically gets 42s plus minus a half second. You would call it about a second slower than the other cycle. But it's a good backup to do just if you know that you're not going to make this one, you can try cycleless. However, I would not recommend really going for cycleless unless you are quite good. You know, once you get 119s, 118s, you can practice cycleless as a backup. But this is, I mean, it is precise, and would not want a beginner to go for that, because the camera turn you'd have to do at the beginning in order to get the line here is pretty precise in order to get a good line. And you have to have a good feel for your spacing on this yellow rectangle as well, so yeah, cycleless kind of sucks if you ask me. Alright, the next backup. This backup, if you are too slow for cycleless, you would do this. You basically, instead of doing the rollout here, or if your spacing is bad and you know a rollout would kill you, you can hold back and do a stop rollout and then jump or stand here. Jump onto this and then wait a little bit and do a spin jump dive. So just wait for the red platform to turn, wait for the blue platform to turn. I think you have to wait a little bit before doing the spin jump dive. So I would personally suggest, so once you're safe, stand here and then do the be buffered standing spin jump dive. Well, that was a bit sus. Kind of like this, you'll catch this platform just as it's done turning. You can do a dive roll out to space, and yeah, this is a 46 cycle. Is what this cycle is. It's pretty nice. It's not awfully difficult, so it's a decent backup in case you lost a few seconds. So what I mean is, like, for a reasonably good player who, let's say you messed this up, you just wait a sec here. You can basically go for this. Whoops. Accidental butt slide. Try not to butt slide there, just make sure you don't like get caught when the platforms are turning. It's like if you make a mistake, like for example, well, definitely don't do that. That's just a timing error, you know, you have to wait a good bit for Mario to turn. But yeah, I make a mistake like that, I can go in for, well, for cycleless if I'm fast enough. I probably won't be, in which case wait a bit and do the movement that I'm showing you here, the 46 cycle. I'm gonna actually do this again just because I want to actually show it properly with like good fundamentals, right? So wait here, walk over, wait for this to flip, stand here, B, and go. I messed that up a little bit, just I had to roll out quite fast there. I would say in order to avoid that from happening, so, you know, wait here, wait for this to flip, jump on it, wait for this to flip, jump on it, stand a little bit further back, like here, in order to give yourself more space there. And that's how you get the 46 cycle. If you, like, royally fuck up, so, like, bonk here and, like, bonk again, or something, and fuck knows what you're doing, you can get this cycle. So this is maybe even the easiest cycle that you can do at the top here. Literally just jump, dive, stop, roll out, jump. Okay, that's the one bit that's a little bit tricky, that when you do this jump dive, you want to make sure that you're diligent about, like, running off the absolute edge of the platform. Yep, so the way this works is jump, dive, stop, roll out, jump, dive, stop, roll out, and then you can jump, dive here. I think this is the cycle. No, actually, never mind, sorry, that's not it. You can do that, but maybe it's a bit too difficult. What I would do here is wait for this to turn, jump here, and then spin jump dive. So, jump dive, at the point where it's flattened out, jump dive, stop, roll out, jump dive, stop, roll out. Jump and just spin jump dive over, stop, roll out again, and then jump dive, re-dive, roll out, and jump dive, like that. This is the 48 cycle. I did it a bit slowly there. But basically you can do it a bit more quickly by just watch out for these accidental side flips. It's easy to lose control by, like, just jumping onto this fairly efficiently like I am here. That's how you would get a nice 48 cycle. So as I hinted, it is possible to go slightly faster here. On this red square, wait for it to start fading back, roll out over here, and then you can basically do this movement. Actually, let me... In order to... So don't go too early, just kind of wait for it to have started moving a little bit, roll outs here, and then run in this direction, roll out, jump small, roll out and press L at the same time is good there in order to center the camera. So you can save 1 second if you do that as a backup strat. And it catches the same kind of... It catches the same cycle at the beginning here as well, so it's strictly a 1 second time save. Yeah, I mean, you can do that if you want. It's not terribly difficult, but it's not absolutely sort of... This is like the ultimate in patience. It's just kind of... You can't mess it up because it's extremely static. Like, you just stop and wait for every platform to turn around, and, you know, it's nice for that reason. So if you're shitting bricks from stress, or you're already kind of agitated because you bonked twice on the lead up or whatever, then you can basically go for that strat. So yeah, when it comes to choosing between backups, like I said, cycleless is a backup you would only really do if you are just too slow, but otherwise didn't make any mistakes. If you made some slight mistakes, you can go for this backup, although it is a bit harder, of course, to actually make this spin jump dive. So this cycle is a little bit harder for that reason. But the nice thing about this cycle is that you actually, you know, it gives you an absolutely forever to wait. Like, the cycle starts very late, and so you can sort of fuck up so much, and you have a long time here before you can, you know, make this cycle. And so it basically lets you back up pretty much anything. And so that's why it's nice to know how to do this cycle as well. That's the reason that I taught the 48 cycle. You know, so what I'm saying is the movement starts later than on any of the other cycles, and therefore you can make the most mistakes and still catch that cycle. And for a beginner, if you want to like learn, say, a slower momentum spin off the cube, you can deliberately try to target this cycle. Like I used to do this movement. I'll show you the exact movement I did. It's kind of a combination of what I just taught for the 48 and 47 cycles. Like I would wait for this so that I could jump, dive, slide, and roll out, and walk over this, and then just do the spin, jump, dive over like this. Redive, you know. So I would always get 48s and Bianco 6 as a beginner. Which, like I said, I'm not teaching it as an explicit strat that you can do, but if you want to do a cube skip, but not be fast enough for the normal cycle, then you can definitely go for that. Your goal is definitely to get fast enough for the normal cycle, or like what I call the normal cycle, the left side 41 cycle. And as an absolute beginner, you don't even need to learn cube skip, just aim for a 51 cycle, and then, yeah, pretty much just try to build it up from there. Once a good sort of, you know, a good point to have made it in your skill in general is just being able to do the 41 cycle and then knowing a few backups as well. It's something that really anyone from sort of 123 onwards, I think, in any percent ought to have down. So yeah, that would basically be what I would suggest. From 123 to 116, you really do not need to go faster in this level than 41 cycle. And even if you do go faster, you can only save at most 2 seconds, really. So yeah, that's how I'm going to end this tutorial. I'm just going to talk about further work, further developments, faster strats. There's not really much to talk about here. So like I said, if you can make the 41 cycle, you're doing well. An advanced player can usually get mid-39s. And the way you would do that is, well, first of all, there's some movement you can do here, where you just do... this is in Despin's Bianco 6 guides, which I will link to. But basically you can just do dive rollouts, dive rollout, dive rollout, jump dive, rollout, jump dive. This is like optimal. It saves 0.1 over the other movement. It was previously only done in ILs, this movement, but it is the fastest possible movement. Like that. A lot of people do spin jump dives in this level. They'll go like this, or something along these lines, and redive. This is harder and more difficult to do fast, so it's not taught anymore. But it was the traditional movement for absolute years until the improved movement with the jump dives was discovered. It was invented by Metacore, actually, the jump dive movement, in like 2020, and he thought it was slower. He didn't time it. He was just like, oh, you know, this seems easy, why not do this? And then people realized it was faster. Well, I say faster. Optimally, it's equally fast, but it's easier to go fast with it, and it's an easier strat in general, IMO. So it's just better. So yeah, that's what you would do for that. There's also the momentum spin you can do here, which saves about 0.8, I think. For the momentum spin, you would need to make a save state here. You would grab the cube pretty far to the sides, and just kind of run, and do like a really late dive. Jump, late dive, and then input a momentum spin facing forward. Like this. It's not easy to do this strat very well. You get messed up by the triangles as well. But yeah, an advanced player often does this movement. Actually, what is the correct movement here? It's like triple jump. Yeah, triple jump is nice. If you do a triple jump, then you can get over all of the Doritos and shit. The Doritos, the triangles. Yep, so we have that movement. And then here we do a dismount with a GWKD, which there are two ways of doing a GWKD. The slower way is to just face the wall and input a GWKD, which is basically rolling your thumb from Y to A to B, which I apparently can't do. I haven't done a successful GWKD in forever. I'm getting GWKs, but the dive isn't coming out for some reason. So that's kind of the slow GWKD, you can do that. GWKD typically saves about 0.6 seconds, and maybe the fast one saves more, I'm not sure how much more. It's pretty hard to do and easy to choke the input, but advanced players will often go for that. And the fast GWKD is like that, except it's done at an angle, and it's done with a loose spin. And the loose spin means that you turn the stick slowly so you don't get the turnaround animation, the one that you would side flip out of, because side flipping is slower in horizontal speed, the turnaround animation, than walking, and so that's why you do a loose spin. You preserve more speed into the spin jump. And yeah, you just kind of... I don't know why I cannot get these GWKDs to come out, but it doesn't matter too much. That's it. Like that. So that's the way of saving. Like I said, momentum spin saves about 0.8, GWKD saves 0.6. If you do either of these strats, you will still do the same cycle at the top that I was teaching. You will just be easier on it. You won't have to worry about not making the cycle. You'll be further ahead, and typically you'll get, instead of mid 41s, you'll get like low 40s or mid 40s. So you end up saving half a second. If you do both of these strats, you can no longer do the left side cycle without risking dying from being too fast, because you would end up basically dying on the platform at the back, which hasn't turned around fast enough or something along those lines. And so then you have different movement, a different strat which basically takes you straight down the middle. And there are videos of this that are, I think, mentioned, or it says where you can find them in Despin's guide. But you basically go straight down the middle. And in ILs, you do a similar thing. You go straight down the middle, but the cube skip you do in ILs is a really strange butt slide. It's kind of like this, right? You grab as far as you can to the right, and then you need to have really good timing. It's like you press A very early to get up as soon as you can. You kind of anticipate the A press, and you jump off after like barely 1 or 2 frames with an upright angle, and then input a spin like this, and then input a spin to get the butt slide. I'm doing it too slowly now because I haven't done this strat in forever. I actually can't remember what I'm even doing wrong. But, oh yeah, you want to center the camera for the left in order to do the butt slide, I remember that. Butt slides are typically seen as not viable in RTA because they lose too much time on average, because you usually don't get enough distance. It depends on quarter frames a bit. If you make it to the end, there's a frame perfect. This isn't quite frame perfect, but it is within 2 frames, so it's very easy to just not get enough speed. I can't get the butt slide at all, but it's really not important. I can't remember how to do it. And yeah, those are your strats. But yeah, butt slide loses time so often because you don't get enough speed and have to do a backup, it's just not seen as RTA viable for that reason. It's basically like a pointless risk. You end up going more slowly than the momentum spin. Yeah, that's it. Bianco 6. We went on a bit, but we did cover a shitload of material, gave a lot of options for cycles and things, and so yeah, enjoy. Hope this helps. Peace.